The night was cold and silent on the barren world of Archon 7. Wind howled across the empty desert, carrying the smell of dust and old metal. Inside a small shelter made from shipwreck pieces, Captain Raynor sat beside a dying fire. He was a human, once a soldier, now just a lonely man. The war had ended years ago, but the echoes of it still lived inside him. He rubbed the scar on his arm and stared at the old helmet on the table. The once shining metal was cracked and faded, marked with alien runes from battles long forgotten. To Raynor, the armor was more than metal. It was a reminder of everything he had lost. Then came the sound. A soft knock. It was so gentle that he first thought the wind was playing tricks. But then it came again. 3 slow knocks. Someone was outside. Raynor stood up, his hand automatically reaching for the plasma pistol on his belt. No one ever came here. The nearest human colony was hundreds of miles away. He opened the door. There, standing under the heavy rain, was a woman, or something like a woman. Her skin shimmered pale silver in the dim light. Drops of rain slid down her arms like liquid light. Her eyes glowed faint blue, calm but filled with pain. She looked fragile, wearing only a torn robe made of strange fabric. For a long moment, neither spoke. The rain fell harder. Finally, she whispered, "Please, let me in." Her voice was soft, melodic, not human but understandable. Raynor hesitated. His instinct screamed caution. But another voice inside him, the one that had been silent for years, told him to open the door wider. He did. She stepped inside, trembling, leaving a trail of wet footprints on the floor. Raynor gave her a blanket and guided her near the fire. She sat quietly, staring at the flames as if seeing them for the first time. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Lyra," she said finally. "My name is Lyra," he nodded slowly. "I'm Raynor." For a while there was only the crackling of the fire. He poured her some water and handed it over. She looked at the cup strangely, then drank in small, careful sips. Her fingers were long and delicate, almost transparent near the light. "You're not from here," Raynor said. Lyra shook her head. "My ship crashed beyond the ridge. I was alone." He studied her. "You're injured?" She smiled weakly. "Not outside. Only inside." Her words made him pause. There was something haunting about her voice, empty yet full of emotion. She looked at him again, eyes glowing brighter. "I have nowhere to go," she said softly. "No one left," Raynor sighed. He knew that feeling too well. He stood, fetched a dry towel and gave it to her. "You can stay here for the night," he said. "The storm will pass by morning." Lyra lowered her eyes. "Thank you, human." When she said human, her tone carried both curiosity and sadness, as if the word itself was a memory. Hours passed. The storm outside grew stronger, shaking the metal walls. Inside, the two sat in silence. Raynor watched her carefully. Something about her didn't fit. Her presence filled the room with a strange warmth, almost like the air itself was alive. His old combat armor, sitting on the table, suddenly flickered with faint blue light. The alien symbols carved into it began to glow. Raynor frowned. "That's impossible," he muttered. Lyra's head turned. She stared at the glowing armor, her lips parting in surprise. Her hand reached out, slowly, carefully, and the symbols flared brighter. "What did you do?" Raynor asked, alarmed, but she shook her head quickly. "I didn't. It recognized me." "Recognized you?" he repeated, confused. "That's old alien tech, your people's design?" She looked down, silent for a long time, then said, "Once. Long ago, but not anymore." Raynor's heartbeat quickened. He realized she wasn't just a survivor. She was connected to something ancient, something his war had touched but never understood. The rain softened. The storm began to fade. Outside, lightning flashed once, and for a second, Raynor saw something strange in the distance. Tall figures standing far out in the storm like shadows watching. When he turned back, Lyra had already curled up near the fire, eyes closed, asleep. But her face looked peaceful, almost glowing in the orange light. Raynor sat down, the gun still in his hand. He looked at the armor, now dim again. The alien runes had stopped glowing, but he could still feel the pulse, faint, alive. He whispered to himself, "What are you, Lyra?" No answer came, only the soft rhythm of her breathing, and the crackle of the fire that somehow burned brighter than before. Outside, across the dark sands, 3 distant blue lights blinked once and vanished into the storm. The morning came quiet and gray. The storm had passed, leaving the land soaked and shining under a pale sun. Captain Rayner stepped outside his shelter, stretching stiff muscles. The desert around him steamed with mist, and strange flowers, ones that had never grown there before, were blooming near the walls. He bent down and touched one. It was soft, glowing, faintly blue, like it was alive in a way normal plants weren't. He frowned. That's new. Inside, Lyra sat by the fire. She had cleaned the small room, stacked the metal scraps neatly, and repaired one of the leaking pipes. When Rayner entered, she looked up with a small smile. "You fix things?" he asked, surprised. She nodded. "It's easier to mend than to destroy." He stared for a moment, then chuckled softly. "Wish more people thought like that." For the next few days, Lyra stayed. She spoke little, moved quietly, and seemed to understand his routines without asking. When he worked outside fixing solar panels, she would watch the sky. When he cooked, she'd stay near the window, eyes always scanning the horizon as if expecting something or someone. Rayner noticed how strange the air felt around her. Machines that had been broken for years started humming again. His crops, once dry and dead, began sprouting green shoots. Even the air filters smelled cleaner. It was like her presence itself carried life. One evening, as the twin moons rose, Rayner sat with her outside the shelter. The desert wind was cool and soft. "You don't sleep much," he said quietly. "I dream too loud," she replied. He smiled faintly. "You talk like a poet." Lyra tilted her head. "I don't know that word." "It means someone who uses words to make the world sound beautiful," Rayner explained. Her eyes softened. "Then maybe I used to be one. Before my world forgot what beauty was." He looked at her, curious. "What happened to your world?" She took a slow breath. "We made too much life, and not enough love." Rayner waited, but she said no more. The wind carried her words away like secrets. That night, while Rayner slept, the armor on his table began to glow again. Soft blue symbols pulsing in rhythm with Lyra's breathing. The lights reflected in her eyes as she looked at it quietly. She touched the metal gently, and the surface shimmered as if recognizing her touch. She whispered something in her language, low and sorrowful. Then she turned and looked toward the door. Far in the darkness outside, 3 faint blue lights flickered again on the horizon. The next morning, Rayner woke early. He found Lyra outside, kneeling near the soil. "What are you doing?" he asked. She smiled without looking up. "Helping the world remember itself." He stepped closer and stopped. The ground around her was full of life. Tiny green plants were pushing through the dirt. Flowers bloomed in circles around her hands. It was impossible. Archon 7 had been dead for decades, Rayner whispered. How are you doing this?" Lyra looked at him with calm eyes. "My people once shaped life from light. We called it the breath of creation. But we lost it. When we lost hope, are you saying you're using that power now?" She nodded slowly. "Only a small echo remains inside me. I am not who I was. I am less." Rayner frowned. "You said you were barren." She lowered her head. "Yes, my body cannot create children anymore. But life takes many forms. Maybe this is all I can give now." Rayner knelt beside her. "You've already given this planet a heartbeat again." She looked at him, her blue eyes glowing softly. "Then perhaps I was meant to find you." For the first time in years, Rayner felt warmth in his chest, not from the sun but from her words. He hadn't realized how cold his life had been until she came. That night, they shared food quietly. Lyra watched the flames again, her face glowing orange. "Human fire," she said softly. "It consumes to live. So different from our light." Rayner smiled. "And yet both keep us warm." She looked up at him, and for a moment there was peace in her expression. A fragile connection, 2 souls from different worlds, both broken, both trying to heal. Suddenly, a soft humming sound filled the air. The lights inside the shelter flickered and the fire dimmed. Lyra froze. "They found me," she whispered. Rayner stood quickly. "Who?" Before she could answer, a faint blue glow appeared outside the window. 3 distant figures walking through the mist, their bodies surrounded by the same silver light that shimmered on Lyra's skin. Rayner grabbed his pistol and stepped toward the door. Lyra reached out, holding his arm. "No," she said. "Do not fear them." "Then who are they?" he asked. Her voice trembled. They are part of me. Raynor looked through the window again. The figures were closer now, their faces hidden, their movements graceful but strange. Then one of them spoke, her voice echoing through the air. Mother, we have found you. Raynor turned to Lyra, stunned. She stood perfectly still, tears shining in her glowing eyes. He whispered, You said you were barren. Lyra looked back at him, her expression filled with sadness and wonder. Maybe I was, she said softly. Until now. Outside, the three alien women stopped at the door, their eyes glowing bright blue, just like hers. And in that moment, Raynor understood. The barren woman had created life again. The door creaked open and the desert wind slipped inside like a whisper from another world. Three alien women stood just outside Raynor's shelter. Their silver skin shimmered in the sunlight, their eyes glowing the same soft blue as Lyra's. Each of them carried strange markings on their foreheads, glowing runes that looked alive. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Lyra's lips trembled. My daughters, she whispered. Raynor blinked in disbelief. Daughters? But you said, I know, she said, cutting him off softly. I thought they were gone forever. The tallest of the three stepped forward. Her voice was calm, musical, and yet filled with emotion. We searched for you for so long, Mother. The stars have changed, but your light called to us again. Raynor stepped between them, instinctively protective. Hold on, who are you people? What do you want here? The woman bowed slightly. We are not people, human. We are echoes, fragments of a lost creation. Her gaze turned to Lyra. When your heart beat again, so did ours. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. I never meant for you to awaken, not here. Not like this. The second daughter, younger and smaller, looked around the barren land. You made this world breathe again. The soil listens. The air remembers. You still carry the breath, Raynor frowned. The breath? Lyra turned toward him. The breath of creation, she said quietly. Our ancient gift. The power to give life where there is none. But you said your people lost that power, he said, her voice broke. We did, because we used it for ourselves, not for others. The daughters exchanged glances as if sharing thoughts through the air. Then the youngest spoke softly. But you found it again, Mother. Through him, Raynor froze. Through me? Lyra looked at him with sadness and warmth. Your armor, the one that glows when I touch it. It carries fragments of my people's lost code. It was forged with hybrid technology during the Old War. Human and alien, merged. Raynor turned toward the glowing armor lying on the table inside the shelter. The alien runes flickered faintly, alive again. So that's why it reacted to you, he murmured. It recognized its creator. Not its creator, Lyra corrected softly. Its child. Outside, the wind shifted. A deep hum filled the air, like the voice of the planet itself awakening. The daughters looked up, their glowing eyes fixed on the horizon. The eldest whispered, They are coming. Raynor tensed. Who's coming? The collectors, Lyra said quietly. The ones who ended us. They will come for the light they cannot make. Suddenly the ground trembled. The sky flashed with thin streams of blue light, like veins spreading across the clouds. The air felt heavy, full of static. Raynor's old scanners began beeping, detecting massive energy signatures moving through the atmosphere. He ran to the console. Multiple objects on high orbit. They're scanning the surface. Lyra's expression turned grim. They have found the signal. The daughters stepped forward, forming a triangle around her. Their hands glowed with light that flowed into the ground. Strange symbols spread across the sand like a living map circling the shelter. Raynor backed up, shielding his eyes. What are you doing? The eldest spoke calmly. We are creating a barrier and to hide her. She must not be taken again. Blue light pulsed around them, building faster and faster until it surrounded the shelter like a dome of shimmering mist. The hum of energy grew stronger, vibrating through the air. Lyra turned to Raynor. You need to leave. The collectors are machines. They won't stop until they take what's inside me. I'm not leaving you, Raynor said firmly. I've run from enough battles. Not this time. Her eyes softened. You don't understand, Raynor. You're human, fragile. They will destroy everything to reach me. Then they'll have to go through me first. For a moment, silence filled the air. Then slowly, Lyra smiled. The first true smile he had seen on her face. You remind me of the first human I ever met. Brave, foolish and full of hope. The blue light grew brighter until the world outside disappeared. Inside the barrier, Raynor's armor began to hum, its alien runes glowing the same rhythm as the daughter's symbols. Suddenly, Lyra gasped, clutching her chest. The light around her pulsed wildly. "Mother!" the daughters cried out. Raynor rushed forward. "What's happening?" Her voice trembled. "The breath. It's too strong. It's feeding on the link between us. It's waking something." Before anyone could react, a blinding beam shot down from the sky, piercing through the clouds. The entire planet seemed to shake. The barrier around the shelter flared, half shield, half mirror, reflecting the beam back upward. The light struck the sky and spread into glowing circles, and then in that light appeared a message, written in alien symbols, visible across the heavens. Raynor stared at it, his heart pounding. "What does it say?" Lyra's voice was faint. "It says, 'We are alive.'" The beam faded. The air calmed. The sky returned to gray, but the message remained, faint, shimmering like a promise written in the stars. Lyra fell to her knees, weak. Raynor caught her before she hit the ground. "It's all right," he said softly. "You're safe." She looked at him, her eyes glowing dimly. "For now." But the collectors saw that message too. "They will come." The daughters surrounded her, their light forming a gentle cocoon. "Then we will be ready," the eldest said. Raynor looked at the sky once more. The words "We are alive" burned faintly among the clouds, a signal not just to the collectors but to every world watching. Something had awakened. And it had started here, with one human, one barren woman, and the spark of life between them. The next morning came with a strange silence. The sky over Archon 7 was tinted gold, the clouds glowing faintly from the energy storm that had passed the night before. The words, "We are alive," still shimmered weakly across the upper sky, a ghostly reminder of what had happened. Inside the shelter, Lyra lay weak and pale. The blue light that once surrounded her skin had dimmed to a faint silver glow. Her three daughters stayed close, watching her every breath. Captain Raynor paced restlessly, checking the scanners again and again. The signals from orbit had disappeared, but he knew they weren't safe yet. Finally, Lyra spoke, her voice soft but steady. "They will come again, Raynor. The collectors never stop." Raynor turned toward her. "Then we'll stop them before they find this place." Lyra smiled sadly. "You cannot fight them with weapons. They do not fear death. They have forgotten what it means." He sat beside her, frustration in his eyes. "Then tell me what they are. Tell me what's happening, Lyra. I can't protect you if I don't understand." The three daughters exchanged glances and then silently nodded. One of them placed a glowing hand on her mother's shoulder as if giving her strength. Lyra took a deep breath. "You deserve the truth." She looked out the window where the desert stretched endless and lifeless beyond the blooming silver trees. "Long ago," she began, "my people were not like this. We were creators. We built worlds, shaped oceans, designed life itself. We believed we were gods." Her voice trembled slightly. "But pride blinds even the brightest minds. We tried to create perfect beings, life that would never die, never hunger, never doubt. We called them the Collectors. They were meant to preserve creation forever." Raynor frowned. "But they turned against you?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes. They decided that only they should exist. That all imperfect life, and including us, must be erased so the universe would remain pure. They hunted us, consumed our worlds, and stored every living memory as data." She paused, her eyes distant. "I was one of the few who escaped. I carried the last spark of the breath, the power to create life instead of destroy it. But I was dying. My body was barren. I could no longer give birth to my people again." Raynor leaned closer, listening carefully. "So you came here to hide?" "I came here to remember," she said softly. "To let one small spark live, even if it was only in the soil or the air. I thought I would die alone." Her eyes met his. "Until you opened your door." Raynor felt a weight in his chest. "And my armor? Why did it react to you?" Lyra's daughters turned toward him. The eldest spoke gently. "Because it carries our code. The same symbols that once gave life to the first worlds." Lyra nodded weakly. "During the last war, humans found fragments of our lost machines. They used them to build your war armor, combining human courage with alien design. I never thought it could awaken again. But when I touched it, it recognized both sides of itself. Raynor stared at the armor lying on the table, glowing faintly with blue light. So the reason your daughters came is because the armor reconnected the lost code. Lyra smiled faintly. Yes, your human heart powered what my world forgot. For a while, silence filled the small room. Only the hum of the air filters and the slow rhythm of her breathing broke it. Finally, Raynor said, "Then you weren't just some wanderer. You were their queen." Lyra looked down. "Once, but I failed them. My people called me the Mother of Dust because everything I touched turned lifeless in the end." Her youngest daughter shook her head. "No, Mother. You gave us more than life. You gave us choice." Lyra's eyes glistened with tears. "Choice," she whispered. "Yes. That is something even gods forget to give." Suddenly, the shelter's warning alarm blared. Raynor jumped to his feet and rushed to the console. "Something's approaching. Large energy signatures, high altitude. Could be drones." Lyra struggled to stand, her daughters helping her. "They found us faster than I hoped." Raynor grabbed his pistol. "Then we fight." Lyra shook her head. "You still don't understand. The collectors are not alive like you think. They're data. They consume light, memory, and soul." He turned toward her. "Then what do we do?" Her gaze was firm now. "We run. But not to hide, to awaken the rest of my kind. The code inside your armor can call them back from stasis." Raynor blinked. "You mean there are more of you?" "Millions," she said, sleeping in the cold dark between stars, waiting for a signal. Raynor stared at the armor. "The signal we just sent across the sky." Lyra nodded. "It has begun." The shelter trembled again. Through the window, blue beams sliced the sky, collector ships descending like blades of light. Lyra turned to her daughters. "Protect the human. He carries what remains of our hope." Raynor shook his head. "No, we protect you." She smiled faintly. "You already did." She placed her hand on his chest right above his heart. A surge of warmth spread through him like sunlight flowing through his veins. Her voice was soft but powerful. "This is my gift, Raynor. The breath. Not to destroy, but to heal." He tried to speak, but couldn't. The light inside him pulsed, matching the symbols on his armor. The runes glowed brighter, forming new patterns. Lyra whispered, "You are now the bridge between two dying worlds." Outside, the sky roared. The collector ships broke through the clouds like silver daggers. The daughters raised their hands, forming a shimmering shield of light around the shelter. Raynor turned to Lyra one last time. "What happens now?" She looked at the glowing horizon. "Now, human, we remember what it means to fight for life, not for victory." The sky above Archon 7 burned with light. Blue streaks fell from orbit like falling stars, each one growing brighter as it neared the ground. The trembling earth sent small clouds of dust into the air. Captain Raynor stood outside his shelter, eyes narrowed, his plasma rifle tight in his hands. The collector ships were still high above, moving like silent ghosts, but now, something else was coming. Human ships. 3 military patrol vessels broke through the clouds, their engines screaming across the empty plains. The old Earth Republic symbol still shone on their sides. Raynor's scanner confirmed it. Human soldiers responding to the same energy surge that had woken the collectors. Lyra stood behind him, pale and weak but calm. "Your people," she whispered. "They come for you." Raynor shook his head. "No. They're coming for you." The first human dropship landed a few hundred meters away. Dust exploded into the air. 10 armored soldiers stepped out, weapons ready. Their commander, a tall man with a scar over his eye, raised his rifle. "Captain Raynor," the man called out, his voice echoing through a speaker. "Stand down and move away from the alien structure." "This isn't a structure," Raynor shouted back. "It's a person." The commander frowned. "Our scanners show massive energy signatures." "Unknown technology. This is a containment breach," Raynor cursed under his breath. "You don't understand. She's not the enemy." Behind him, Lyra's 3 daughters stepped forward, their silver skin glowing faintly. The soldiers instantly raised their weapons. "Contact! We've got 3 hostiles. Hold your fire!" Raynor yelled, stepping in front of them, but his voice was drowned by the sudden crack of plasma rifles. Bolts of energy tore through the air. Raynor ducked as explosions shook the sand around them. The alien daughters moved gracefully, raising shimmering shields of blue light. The blasts hit the barrier and scattered harmlessly. Lyra cried out, "Stop this! You are brothers, not enemies." But no one listened. Raynor's old instincts kicked in. He dashed forward, shouting at his former comrades. "Cease fire!" I repeat, cease fire. The commander aimed his weapon directly at Lyra. "Step aside, Raynor. That creature is triggering planetary decay readings. If we don't shut it down, the whole sector could collapse. She's healing the planet," Raynor roared. "Not destroying it." Another shot grazed past his shoulder. The daughters reacted instantly, sending a shockwave of light that threw the soldiers back. The ground cracked open, glowing blue veins spreading like lightning through the soil. Lyra staggered forward, her voice trembling. "No more fighting." Her hands glowed as she spread her energy outward. The air shimmered and the soldiers' weapons fell silent, locked in a field of gentle light. Raynor turned to her. "Lyra, stop. You'll burn yourself out." She smiled weakly. "If I stop, everything dies." Her glow grew stronger, her skin becoming transparent like crystal. The light around her pulsed with every heartbeat. The soldiers froze, unable to move or speak, watching in awe as the barren land around them began to bloom with silver grass and flowers. Raynor's visor showed impossible readings, oxygen levels rising, radiation falling. The planet was healing right before his eyes, but then a new sound cut through the air, a deep metallic scream. The clouds above split open. A collector ship broke through the atmosphere, massive, spinning, its hull made of black mirror-like plates. It was not alive, but it pulsed like something that could think. Lyra's daughters gasped. "They are here." Raynor raised his weapon. "Then let's finish this." Lyra shook her head. "No, Raynor. This battle isn't won by killing." The collector ship fired a beam of white light. It struck the ground a few hundred meters away, disintegrating everything in its path. The soldiers panicked, running for cover. Raynor grabbed Lyra's arm. "We have to get you out of here." But she pulled away gently. "I can't run. I am their signal. If I go, they will follow." Her eyes glowed brighter. "But I can end this." Before Raynor could stop her, she stepped forward, lifting her hands toward the sky. The ground beneath her feet began to glow. Her daughter screamed, "Mother, no!" Lyra's voice rang across the battlefield, calm yet powerful. "Life does not need to win, only to continue." A column of light burst upward from her body, striking the collector ship directly. The beam grew brighter and brighter until it consumed the entire sky. Raynor shielded his eyes. The heat was overwhelming. When the light faded, the collector ship was gone. Only drifting ashes remained, fragments of metal falling like black snow. But Lyra collapsed to the ground. Raynor ran to her, catching her in his arms. Her body was weightless, almost fading. Her eyes, still glowing faintly, looked up at him. "You saved them," he whispered. "You saved us," Lyra smiled softly. "No, Raynor. We saved each other." Her hand touched his chest one last time. A soft light passed from her fingers into him. "Remember," she whispered, "mercy is stronger than fear." And with that, her body turned into light, breaking apart into thousands of tiny glowing particles that drifted into the air. The silver grass around them bloomed in waves, spreading across the valley like ripples of life. The soldiers stood silent, lowering their weapons. None of them could speak. Raynor fell to his knees, watching the glowing particles rise into the sky. His hands trembled, but his eyes were calm. The words she had spoken echoed in his mind. Mercy is stronger than fear. Silence fell over Archon 7. The battle was over, but the air still shimmered with the echo of Lyra's light. The clouds glowed faintly silver, and every breath tasted clean, fresh, alive. Captain Raynor knelt in the dirt, staring at the spot where Lyra had vanished. Only her soft blue shimmer remained, floating in the air like dust made of stars. Around him, soldiers stood still. No orders, no weapons, just quiet shock. The barren desert that had once surrounded them was no longer dead. The ground rippled with silver vines, and tiny flowers glowed faintly in the dim sunlight. Every inch of the planet seemed to be breathing again. Raynor whispered, "You did it, Lyra. You really did it." Behind him, Lyra's 3 daughters stood together, their faces calm but full of grief. The youngest one knelt beside where her mother had fallen, touching the glowing dust with trembling fingers. "She's gone," she whispered. The eldest shook her head gently. "No, look closer." As Raynor watched, the glowing dust began to swirl slowly, rising from the ground. The air vibrated softly, like a heartbeat returning after silence. The energy didn't vanish, it flowed into the soil, into the air, into everything. Lyra's eldest daughter looked at Raynor. She's becoming part of this world, Raynor frowned. What do you mean? She gave her body to the breath, the daughter explained softly. Now the planet itself carries her memory. Every seed, every leaf, every spark of life will remember her name. He looked around in awe. The ground beneath his boots pulsed faintly with light. The once dead sand had turned to soft earth. Tiny roots snaked through the soil, glowing as they spread. In the distance, the horizon shimmered. Trees rising from the dust like silver towers, growing fast as if time itself was speeding up. Raynor took a slow breath. She's bringing it all back, the youngest daughter turned to him. Her light was never meant to destroy. It was meant to awaken what was asleep. Hours passed. The soldiers began helping rebuild the area around the shelter. Their commander, once harsh and cold, now stood silent watching the miracle unfold. None of them dared speak of orders anymore. They had witnessed something no human training could explain. Raynor stood with the 3 alien daughters at the edge of a new forest. The trees shimmered under the sunlight, their leaves like mirrors reflecting faint blue light. The air hummed gently, alive and peaceful. Will the collectors return? He asked quietly. The eldest daughter shook her head. Not here. They feed on silence and emptiness. This place, it sings now. Raynor looked up at the sky. What about the message she sent? The one that said, "We are alive"? The middle daughter smiled faintly. It's still traveling across every channel, every frequency. Sooner or later, others like us will hear it. Raynor turned toward them. Then her people will come back? Yes, the eldest said softly. And maybe humans will meet them again. This time not as conquerors, but as family. That night, the first rain in centuries fell upon Archon 7. The drops were warm, glowing faintly blue as they touched the soil. The plants drank eagerly, and the air filled with a soft music that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Raynor sat alone by the campfire, holding a small silver crystal that had formed where Lyra had vanished. It pulsed gently in his palm, like a heartbeat. He closed his eyes. You're still here, aren't you? A soft voice echoed in his mind, faint like wind through trees. No life truly ends where kindness begins. Raynor smiled sadly. Yeah, I'll remember. The daughters stood nearby, their light blending with the silver forest around them. The youngest one walked to him, kneeling beside the fire. She gave you the breath, she said gently. You carry part of her now. He looked at her in surprise. Me? Yes, she said. That's why the armor still glows. You are the bridge between human and creation. Raynor turned toward his armor lying beside him. The alien runes pulsed faintly in rhythm with his heartbeat. So what happens now? The eldest daughter answered from behind him, her voice soft but strong. You continue her work. You heal what others broke. Raynor nodded slowly. Then I guess I'm not a soldier anymore. The middle daughter smiled. No, you're something better. By morning, the forest had grown so thick that sunlight barely touched the ground. Streams of clear blue water ran through the roots. Birds, real, living creatures, circled the air for the first time in hundreds of years. Raynor stood among the trees, the silver crystal still in his hand. He looked back one last time at the spot where his shelter had once stood, now hidden under vines and flowers. He whispered, Goodbye, Lyra, the wind answered, gentle and warm, carrying her voice like a memory across the air. Goodbye, Raynor, and thank you. For letting me live again, he smiled, turned and walked into the glowing forest, the daughters following behind him, 3 lights moving through a world reborn. Above them, the sky shimmered once more, and for a brief moment, the stars aligned into a single faint word, mercy. Years passed. The planet once called Archon 7 was no longer a wasteland. From orbit it glowed green and silver, a living jewel in the dark. Forests shimmered with soft blue light. Rivers ran clear and storms were calm and warm. What had once been a dead world had become a place of rebirth, the Garden of Lyra. No one knew how it had begun, but every visitor spoke of the same thing, a gentle hum in the air like a heartbeat beneath the soil. The world felt alive, aware, and when travelers touched the ground, they swore they heard a voice whispering through the wind. No life truly ends where kindness begins. In the rebuilt colony, Captain Raynor had changed. He no longer wore his armor in battle. Instead, he carried it with him as a relic, a reminder of a promise. The alien runes on it still glowed faintly, pulsing softly with his heartbeat. He had grown older, his hair turning gray, but his eyes still carried the same calm strength Lyra had once seen in him. He spent his days teaching. Not war, not tactics, but balance. To the young humans and the alien visitors who now came to Archon 7, he spoke of Lyra, the barren woman who gave life to a world. He would say, "She didn't fight to win. She fought to heal." That's how we survive, not by power, but by mercy. The children would listen wide-eyed as he told them how light once fell from the sky, how life returned to dust, and how a single act of kindness changed everything. Far beyond Archon 7, the message Lyra sent, "We are alive," continued to travel through space. It passed through dead satellites, abandoned war stations, and across the ruins of forgotten civilizations. In time, others heard it. On a distant moon, alien refugees looked up and saw the words glowing faintly in their sky. On an old Earth outpost, a scientist studying deep space frequencies cried when the signal translated itself into her native language. "We are alive." It was a message of peace, or not a warning, not a threat, just a reminder that hope could outlive war. The words began to spread. Humans, once divided across dozens of colonies, started reaching out to old allies again. Alien ships began visiting human ports not for trade but for learning. And at the center of it all was Archon 7, the planet that had been reborn by compassion. One evening, Raynor sat beneath the silver trees that grew near his home. The air shimmered softly, full of fireflies that glowed faint blue. Beside him stood Lyra's daughters, now fully grown, radiant and wise. They had stayed on the planet, caring for the new life their mother had created. The eldest spoke softly. "She would be proud of you, Raynor." He smiled faintly. "I should be saying that to her." "She is still here," said the youngest. "In every breath, in every leaf." Raynor looked around at the glowing forest. "Sometimes I can still feel her." The middle daughter placed a hand over his heart. "You carry her light. It will never fade." They stood together in silence, watching the stars. For a moment, one of them flickered brighter, a blue star that pulsed 3 times and faded. Raynor smiled. "She's listening." Years later, travelers from across the galaxy came to see the Garden of Lyra. They came not for riches or glory, but for peace. At the heart of the great forest stood a monument, simple, carved from crystal and stone. On it were words in both human and alien languages. He took in one barren woman and gave birth to a world. Below the inscription, small flowers grew endlessly, never wilting, always glowing, as if the world itself remembered her. Pilgrims from distant systems left gifts there, water from their home planets, soil from fallen worlds, and seeds from new ones. They called it the place of beginning. On the 100th anniversary of Lyra's sacrifice, a soft light appeared above the monument. Raynor was long gone by then, but the daughters and their descendants gathered under the silver trees. The light formed into a familiar shape, soft, glowing, gentle. It was her. Lyra's voice echoed through the air, calm and kind. "My children, you have learned what we forgot. Life does not belong to one race, one world, or one kind. It belongs to all who choose to protect it." The crowd fell silent. Even the wind stopped. "When you choose mercy, you carry my light. When you forgive, you awaken my breath. Never forget, creation is not a gift of God's. It is the courage to love where others choose to hate." The light faded slowly, drifting into the trees and sky. From that night onward, no one saw war on Archon 7 again. Centuries later, when future explorers mapped the galaxy, they found something strange. The roots of the silver forest had spread far beneath the planet's crust, pulsing with living energy. Some claimed the planet itself had become alive. Others said it was dreaming of every world it could still heal. But the truth was simpler. Lyra had never left. Her voice still lived in the air, in the rain, in the hearts of those who remembered her story. And across countless stars, one message kept repeating, soft, endless, and eternal. Mercy is stronger than fear. End of story. Final moral. One act of kindness can outlive empires. One human heart can heal a galaxy.